People, welcome to this new episode of Trini Trent TV, where we are continuing our deep dive into the catalog of Destra on our very special series here on the channel called Maco Soca. This week we have a very interesting conversation. And to get us started, I have a little question for you, Elikya. I have a little
All
question.
right. Okay.
Independent. Do you know what that means, baby? Do you know what that means, baby? Yeah. Hold there, wait
Wow.
to say that. Hold there, wait to say that one.
It's the fact that I said it
Oh,
earlier. I said it earlier,
the
like taking my
reason,
notes down.
the reason I brought this up is because of the album that we're talking about this week. We are
Right.
talking about Destra's Independent Lady album.
Yes.
Every time Elikya and I talk about this particular album, we always have to we sing a certain line in one of the songs, in one of the main songs. I'm independent ladies. It just takes us down every single
Right.
time. Oh, Destra, don't change Gil. Don't change Destra. Destra, don't change Gil. But
She has a
yes,
little kookiness or silliness about. Let me not say kookiness. A little silliness about her. Playfulness.
a playfulness. I
Playfulness.
like to say all great
Playfulness.
artists have like quirks. Different artists have their own little isms, and
Yeah.
Destra has her little moments.
Yeah.
But yes,
Yeah.
independent lady. This is going to be a very interesting conversation because
All right. I'm
Elikya
ready.
and I, Gil, you remember how many notes we put on for this?
Do I? Do I?
We gotta have fun. You know, one thing I will say coming into this album is that I found that this album really captured the stronger parts of her first two records. I felt like this was definitely a step up. Like, not trying to compare Destra to Destra, but I feel like, hey, look how my mic will get tangled up now. Like, give me a second. Anyway, Destra, one thing I felt like she did on this record was she took a step up. She really and truly like found a stride that she couldn't really capture on those first two records because, she was still finding her sound, finding her space, even though she came in like very well developed. And I felt like Independent Lady, I don't know, it just felt like a very strong record because it was just structurally, I felt like it was much stronger than the first two. I feel that was what was really going on. I felt like it was structurally a very sound album, like,
I
sonically
agree.
cohesive.
I agree.
Like, I felt like listening to the record, especially in the car, I went from track 1 to track 7 without feeling the need to skip or pause and ask, why is this song here? This sounds so strange. Everything from those first 7 tracks, which is the Independent Ladies opening track, going straight to what about Jumpin'. I
Mm-hmm.
felt like those first 7 songs, it was like a nice ride. What you thought, Elikya?
No, I agree. I was gonna say this might be the start of her having albums where you like, okay, these songs do belong on the same project. I think there's an album in the future that might make me pull away from that statement, but I think this
Mm-hmm.
is one for sure. Like Jumpin' and Colors Again, you see why they are on the same project within the same, few tracks. It just flows very well, and then musically too, like you said, it's not a letdown. It's the parts that you love. I like how you said that. The parts that you love about her first two albums,
Mm-hmm.
just being with development and also change with the times a little bit, as the years go on, just in terms of what other people are producing as well. But it feels very Destra. In fact, Jumpin' is a song that last episode when you mentioned, I forgot which song you said it was, Trent, that you
Yeah, like I
think,
remember our old brains now. Mm-hmm.
yes, but in the previous episode, I said that Jumpin' would be the song that I think really
Oh, I
captures
remember. I
Destra's
remember.
sound. Yes.
Up in the air.
Up in
Up
the
in the
air. That
air.
was the
And
one.
look again. She jumping, going where?
Up in the air.
Up in the Gil Castillo on the blasted ground. Anyway, yes, go ahead.
But yeah, like if I had a song that I think captured a lot of Destra's sound up until this point and thereafter, and her musicality and the way she moves through a song, and I know we'll get there later in the video, but Jumpin' to me is that. But then Colors Again is right there next to it. Oh Chalet is right there next to it. And just other songs on this album.
But one thing I will have to say though is that, you're going on this nice ride with Destra, those first 7 tracks, and then you just suddenly hit a wall. So the problems aren't like sprinkled throughout the record. I wouldn't say problems. Let's not call it problems. I don't like to call people's creative expression a problem. But I
Right.
would say for me as a listener, I didn't really feel challenged as a listener, owning my feelings. I didn't really feel challenged as a listener until we got to those last 4 songs because it went through these 7 really great records that just flowed. And then when you get to the last 4 songs, which is the Max It Up Road Mix, which wasn't bad, but I felt
Yeah.
like, okay, we already have the original version of Max It Up right there. So with the Max It Up Road Mix, then you have the Fly Funky Harmony Mix, then you
Yeah.
have Troubled Waters, and then Bridge Over Troubled Waters. So
Yeah.
what you have here are 2 remixes and then 2 gospel records.
Yeah.
And I felt like that really broke my stride as a listener. I felt like I wasn't really, it took me out to the moment. Like I was enjoying this thing and then bam. I'm like, what's happening here?
It's also a statement about, as we're not saying problems, like you just said, but those being where we have a problem with the album, those 4 tracks, and not the soca records, not the original soca records, makes a point about how when it comes to, the genre that she's performing in, she got it. She got it well for the most part. At this point, the issue is just, the 2 remixes and 2 other integrated genres or 2 gospel songs. So had those 4 not been there, because they didn't need to be there in that sense, right? Like because they're 2 remixes and 2 gospel songs means that they don't need necessarily to be a part of a soca album. Had those not been there, this would have been a pretty perfect album.
One thing I will also say about this record is that Destra had some great vocal work on this album. Like everybody know I love good singing. I like good singing. I'm not the best at it myself. Well, except when I'm in the car and in the shower. I'm iconic. What can I say? But I'm not the best at it. But I really do really appreciate Destra's vocal work on this record. I felt like there was some big, bright melodies. I felt her voice really soared in certain parts of this record. Like it was like a very incredible vocal, like a big vocal. And then, of course, you get to like those moments where she knows how to push and pull, ebb and flow. Like she would come on strong, but then she could soften it up. So it's not like she's yelling at you or screeching at you throughout the record. She knows when to amp it up and pull it back. And I feel like that really gives, I don't know, it colors the whole feeling of the album. It gives it a certain intensity. And to me, that really matches when you look at the album cover and the album art. I feel like that's what you get. Because when you listen to the album, and then of course you look at the album art, you see how they all come together. It's an intensity. You have these 4 men around her, all trying to grab at her, and she's bursting through. And that comes across in the vocal, but yet she still maintains a softness to her. There's still a vulnerability in those small moments. And I feel like that really comes through on this record.
Yeah, that I think what you just said, like when she's, soft when she needs to be, strong when that's a very musical thing. It makes the song dynamic, not only in the word when you say like, okay, this is dynamic, it's great, but actually those are
Mm-hmm.
dynamics, the volume. That's why I say she sings like someone who's playing an instrument, who knows how to do it. The music, she's a very musical kind of person. I don't know if she knows like music theory herself, but due to, as you explained, her background, her family, she's very musical in her music. It
Mm-hmm.
sounds redundant, but that's what makes the song interesting to listen to, because there are changes going on. It's not the same thing hitting you the whole time for 3 minutes or 5 minutes.
And as we're talking about Destra's vocal and the boldness, the delivery, one thing I want to talk about here are her ad-libs.
Yeah.
Well, I say one thing I want to talk about here are her ad-libs. I'm
Libs.
not sure if it is whatever. Anyway,
Is her
what I want to
ad-libbing.
her ad-libbing, right? We talking massa language now.
Right.
We just
Right.
trying to figure it out. But
Right.
anyway,
Right.
I think that she did it's really interesting to hear how she pieces the ad libs together, because I hear 2 different strong influences in how Destra does ad libs. Because I hear Denise Belfon, who has that commanding type of presence, that assertiveness. it's like a boldness, like an authoritative force on the record. And she's not the only woman, in Trinidad music who has done that. I mean, if you go all the way back to people like Calypso Rose, you feel like this is a strong presence on the track. But I feel like what Denise really brings, and what probably, Destra probably sees a similarity with Denise, is that you feel like this is somebody who is fully in command and in control of her space. And her ad-libs are always, very directive, very controlled, very strong. And then there's a certain energy to the way that she does her ad-libbing as well. And that reminds me of Machel, because Machel is like lightning hitting the stage. Anybody here in Trinidad and Tobago know, or any part of the world who's experienced a Machel Montano concert, you go to a Machel concert, when Machel come out, the crowd goes crazy. Because Machel he's like a supernova when he hits the stage. And I feel like Destra draws on that energy, like she pulls on that energy. You feel like she's sending something through you when she's singing. And I feel like she really brings that together, Machel plus Denise in the ad-libbing.
Yeah, I like how you broke that down. That's a question I asked you before I was like, okay, because I would just hear the ad libs in her music, right? And I always liked them. And then as we were talking, you would point out in some songs that's a very macho ad lib. And I'm like, okay, so her ad libs are macho. And then in another song, you're like, that's a very Denise ad lib. And I'm like, okay, so she pulls something. And then in a song, you said that's a very Destra ad lib. I said, okay, what's going on here? Like, what is going on here? So I did ask you, to help define that. And in that explanation, it makes me realize that even before taking Denise's command, Machel's energy, but directing it to the crowd, before she would actually have the moniker, the Queen of Bacchanal. But if Bacchanal is part of chaos, if part of Bacchanal is like chaos and energy and all that stuff, she is orchestrating that amongst the audience by being, because Denise is commanding to a man, do this, do that, I want you to do this. Machel is the electric, like you said, electric shock that exists, but doing it to the crowd, because in her song, she'll be like, jump. And, she'll say very directional things to the audience. Even before Queen of Bacchanal, that's what she was functioning as. And we talked about her background vocals, her leads, her background vocals, and her ad libs are like three different strengths.
It's like three different personas almost. Like,
yes.
They're like or parts of the same person that come out. Like, because you have the lead vocal, the ad libs are the directional force. Like, I'm telling you what to do. That's the energy. That's the shock that she's sending out to the crowd and the direction that she wants them to go. The lead is me singing the song. And then the harmony for me, what goes the backgrounds and how she does the backgrounds, to me, that is where either if she's soft on the lead, she brings energy on the harmony. Like she's more, she punches through more. But then if she's more forceful on the lead, then she will soften the edges with the harmonies.
It's like three things you can study separately about, about her music. So that's good.
But one thing I will say is that, and I love the fact that you spoke about, her directing the audience. And we had this conversation off camera. And I just love that, because what Destra reminds me of, and it's an odd connection, and I probably need to flesh it out more. But back in the 1800s, there was something called the Jamet Carnival. That was something that the Creole class, and as well as the white people here in Trinidad and Tobago, and I know we always have to put whites in quotes, because not everybody in Trinidad who say they're white actually white. They're hiding the black grandfather, but I'll leave that one alone. But anyway, you have the upper class people, and we're using this based on a social, economic, and political power. We're not saying that, anyone is better than the other. But the higher classes in society, what they would basically do was label what they call the lower class carnival as the Jamet Carnival. Because, people in the lower class, particularly people of African descent, during carnival time here in the Caribbean, in Trinidad and Tobago, in Trinidad, let's own it here, people, back in the 1800s, what you would see is that they would take to the streets. Now, this comes out of yard culture, where many of the lower class people, they had to find a way to communicate, to socialize, to express culture and share space in the yard, the barrack yard or the tenement yard, as it's called in some other places. And in that space, they defined what carnival and what their expression meant to them. And when they would take to the streets of Port of Spain and the different parts of the island, they would express themselves almost to subvert a colonial space or a post-colonial space. It was still colonial at that time in the 1800s. And they would basically express themselves in what many people consider to be a very lewd fashion. But it was very controlling, it was very powerful. So in this space, you had men and women sharing space and sharing power. People would say the prostitutes and the pimps were on the streets. And it wasn't about a prostitute begging somebody for attention. She was out there, breast out, body out, standing strong in who she was, and then commanding the crowd around her. So men and women were called jamets at this time. But over time, that label has become more associated with women or queer men. That's who you refer to as a jamet. Because when anything is a space of, and we know this from understanding the patriarchy or and gender dynamics, anytime a space is or an attribute is given to a woman as part of a certain thing where it's empowering for a woman, what patriarchy does is that it takes it and it flips it as a way to denigrate and break women down and make them seem like something less than they are. So what has come over time is that the term jamet has been applied to the other women and queer people. So in this space, when I think of Destra, with the reason I'm bringing up jamet culture or I'm bringing up the jamet carnival is because here we have a woman who's standing very boldly in who she is and directing the crowd, much like the Jamets would in their full power, in their full authority. So I felt like that is something that was very interesting. And it's also a reason I brought this up because if she's really inspired by Denise Belfon, she has Marsha's energy, but she has Denise's commanding authoritative presence. That's the Jamet energy. That's the Jamet presence there. It's funny because Denise has a song called Jamet. Bring out the jamet and bring out the jamet and oh, 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 oh. I used to sing that song. I get in so much trouble. Yeah, so much trouble. But on that song, when you think about how Denise sings that song, just that little part I was just doing there, not as good as Denise.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But bring out the jamet and she's singing it. And she's telling you, as you pointed out, she's telling the man what she wants.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
She need a man to come. She need a man to stand up like a pipe. That's what she wants. The banana must feel ripe. She's saying what she wants and she's commanding him. I should not know these lyrics. I know these lyrics since I was a child. But she's basically painting a picture of what she wants and she's directing the man to do what she wants. And I feel like Destra is doing that, but on a crowd level.
Yeah.
And I see Jamet there. Goes back to the root. Now, I don't know if Destra's consciously doing it. I don't know if she's sitting down and say, yeah, I'm going to be, the daughter of the Jamet culture. I don't really know if that's what she does. But that's definitely what I feel she's tapping into when she's performing.
So sometimes something exists in a society that even if you didn't study it or like you don't know it directly or you're aware of it because you're in that same society, you are influenced by it just through exposure. So even if she didn't sit and say like, okay, I'm going to reclaim this term jamet, which I want to say that it's patriarchy what was happening, but also colonial, because you did say it was associated with lower class Black people. So it was used as a term to continue like an attack that exists on Black people since the first attack that was made on African people, on the continent. So in essence, or just naturally so, she is functioning in that same system, whether or not she's conscious of it. But through study or people who, can bring a certain analysis to it, they can point that out.
Now, folks, if you're hearing any weird noises in my background, it is election time here in Trinidad and Tobago, local government elections, and they're walking the streets and begging people to vote for them. You understand? I don't know why they couldn't walk the streets and fix the pothole in front of my house and in front of my area. The amount of pothole on the road, they could have fixed that, put that energy into fixing things instead of campaigning. But I will leave that one alone anyway. Anywho, I will say that what she might also be doing is tapping into that calypsonian energy. You spoke before about the griots in a previous episode. I think that was in our very first episode together. You spoke about that. And then, of course, we're talking about Destra's experience coming from the, being a junior calypso monarch at her school, having that guidance, having that grooming. So she's learning how to engage and direct her crowd. So I feel like it's a combination of different things. The influence of a Denise and Machel. I feel like it's also her own experience coming up through calypso. And then,
Mhm.
of course, her tapping in either consciously or unconsciously to the energy of the jamets.
Mhm.
And now she's just become this very electrifying performer.
And, to continue on, because now we're talking about stage performance, right?
Mm-hmm.
On this album is a song titled Max It Up, which I've noticed is a part of her live show. I've never seen her in person, face to face, but in whether it's on social media or, online performances like on YouTube and stuff like that, I've noticed that she uses Max It Up as a tool, as a part of, there's a part where she just has the rhythm going. She tells people, okay, we're turning this way, point this way, run this way, stop, turn the other way, point this way, run this way. Or she might split the audience, or she might say, go back or go forward. She, again, is directing the audience. And I think it comes together on this album well. So it seems like there's a groove that she got into career wise, or just a sense of like, okay, what is my role in soca music? What is my artistry, or what am I here to offer? She seems to have got into that on this album.
But it's funny that you bring up Max It Up because I actually have an issue with that song. A few
Really?
issues.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a few issues.
A few. Okay.
Let me explain. One thing I've noticed with Max It Up is that on this record, she's talking about the different benchmarks of success. Where she wants to see soca going, because that's what she's talking about. Max it up. We're taking soca to the next level. Max it up. But throughout the record, throughout the song, she keeps referencing foreign benchmarks. She wants to see the song get on BET and MTV at the Grammys. I mean, even in the music video, it opens with, Best Soca Artist Destra on a Grammy Award. You understand? And I feel like when I listen to this record, even though it's a well produced record, she sings it fantastically. I think it's just a all around great song. But the lyrics is where I feel like I hit a snag. That's where I feel challenged. Because as a Trinidadian, as a West Indian, a Caribbean person, I always sit back and I wonder, why is it that we're constantly, why is it this empowering question? So probably I need to reframe it. At this stage, understanding who we are, and of course, Destra, constantly, promoting, Trinidad culture. This is Trinidad, as you love Trinidad, Trinidad, Trinidad. Yet we're using foreign benchmarks as where we're going. So yes, I like what she does with Max It Up vocally, and I love how she performs it, as you pointed out. I think that is a great song for her to like amp up a space. But then when I listen to the lyrics of the record and I watch a music video, I feel like that's where it takes me out, it pulls me out of the moment. Because I feel like, why am I looking at an artist who is a flag bearer, who is at the forefront of the music industry? I mean, at this point, as we pointed out in the previous video, people were already starting to call her the Queen of Soca. So we had that conversation going. But here as the Queen of Soca, what are you directing us to do? Are you directing us to celebrate ourselves, or are you directing us to look outside of ourselves for validation, for acceptance? It's always been something that, listening to the song over the years, kind of bothered me.
I think that's interesting. I think it's interesting for two reasons. One, I agree. I think that within the soca industry, just like, within the Haitian music industry, our benchmark should be the things that we produce. This is a question about a sense of self. Ultimately, that's what you're getting at, right? And when it comes to the Black community within the United States, oftentimes they separate the BET Awards from the Grammys and, other MTV Awards and other award shows that exist, because there's a lack of a sense of self. Sometimes they feel like it doesn't have the same esteem as the Grammy. It doesn't have the same prestige. So yeah, you may have 50 BET Awards, but if you have 0 Grammys or 1 Grammy and 50 BET Awards, that says something about you as an artist. This is the lens that a lot of people have. But all of these things are so there's the disconnect between the Black community and mainstream or white America, the white population in the United States, but it's all still within the United States, right? And then so the United States that exports itself around the world, not only through imperialism, of course, but regardless of how they see the Black artists or BETs within the United States, when it's projecting the United States to the world, everything is good, everything is even. So those on the outside of the United States, you see the BET, the Grammys, you see the MTV. So it's like it's not knowing how that relationship really is, but it still is pointing to your point about why are these our benchmarks in the first place. They're not even equal to each other, but they also should not be how we judge ourselves either.
Now, this album came out in 2006, right? 2006.
Yes.
Around this time, in that early to mid 2000s, was when you started to see this big wave of penetration into the United States from West Indian people, particularly out of Jamaica. You know, Kevin Lyttle is not from Jamaica. I think he's from St. Vincent. But when you listen to a lot of people like Elephant Man, Sean Paul, etc., they were really penetrating the American market. And then, of course, we had Rihanna, who's from Barbados, but she was in that dancehall reggae fusion mix. That she was in that space. So when you look at what was happening, Numidi, Nina Sky, yada yada, you had all of these beats, music that was associated with the Caribbean having a second stride in America. Well, actually, not a second stride. It's probably like the third or fourth stride. If we go all the way back to Harry Belafonte days, come forward. But the thing that I think crossed my mind is that where we were watching a lot of this was on the MTV and BET and at the Grammys. You know, that's where we on the outside were. That's how we were watching it. You turned on MTV, and there was Kevin Lyttle and Wayne Wonder and all these different people. Sean Paul was everywhere. Yeah. And then, of course, you turn on BET, and who's on 106 and Park but Kevin Lyttle. And you've seen all these people sitting down, you know, with AG and Free and talking about different things. So us here in Trinidad, kind of wondering, okay, when is our turn? I don't know if that's what was going through Destra's mind.
And y'all see it as one thing.
We see it as one thing: American acceptance, American success, breaking through. That's how a lot of people saw it. Oh, if Jamaica can do it, why can't we do it too?
Okay.
And you see, that's been an ongoing thing. I mean, the history of CARICOM, Caribbean single market economy, all of that drama. There's always been this thing amongst the different islands because it's almost like a crab in a barrel mentality. Like who is the one that's going to make it? And if they're doing it, why can't we do it too? And of course, there's this ongoing competition between certain territories. So, you know, there's an ongoing cultural and, you know, competition between a place like Jamaica and Trinidad, as well as Barbados and Trinidad and Barbados and Jamaica. You have different places where there's like, sometimes it's spoken very clearly and sometimes it's just an unspoken thing. But it's this competition. And as people are looking on seeing the Jamaican success, especially since there's a Jamaican sound, which is dancehall and reggae, since that's the sound that's penetrating, and then later on reggaeton, which is basically Spanish dancehall. When you see that, no shade, you see that really making waves, then the artists here start wondering, okay, when is our turn? When are we going to do it? Especially when you hear Turn Me On by Kevin Lyttle, which is soca dancehall. Now, Americans were calling it dancehall. It's not dancehall, it's soca dancehall. And then we here in Trinidad saying, wait, that is Trinidad music? And then you're seeing somebody waving, seeing the music video, they're waving Trinidad flags in the mix, and you're saying, well, that should be a Trinidadian doing that and sitting on that chair.
Gotcha.
So then that kind of tension and competition starts building. Even beyond music, people do it. Like with sports, Usain Bolt and the Jamaican athletes, you know, they did amazing things at the Olympics. When is Trinidad turn? Why we can't fix we stadium? Why we all our athletes had to go and train abroad? Why we can't get we athletes to train here? Why we don't have better athletes? Oh God. And it's start comparing and comparing. And every time we win a little medal is, oh God, we finally win a medal. But Jamaica get 10. We need to do better. So it's like a competition.
So it's not growth because you want to see growth of yourself. It's growth by comparison. Or
I think part of it is that I can't put I'm not in Destra head, but I think part of it is of it is seeing. Yeah, part of it is seeing where the folks are going, and then the other side of it is also seeing. Okay, well, we also want not just comparison, but we want to be successful, and I think part of that also comes from us being in the Caribbean, because I think it's a side effect of colonialism in some ways, because all the time, how do you measure yourself? How do
Yeah,
you
of
measure
course.
yourself? We're still trying to figure out who we are as a nation.
Yeah.
What's our culture? We don't really have a shared culture. That's a myth in many ways. And I'll come to that in just a bit. We don't really have a shared identity. We don't all look the same here in Trinidad and Tobago. Some of us have different accents. Tobagonians do not sound like Trinidadians. And different parts of Trinidad have different accents. We have different paths. So we talk about Destra and the Convent accent just the other day. So, we have different life experiences. And I think because of that, we're still trying to figure out who we are. We are a very young nation, about 61 years old, coming up upon. Oh, well, just happened. So we're 61. So we're a baby. So if that's the case, we're trying to figure out who we are. And if that's what we're trying to figure out, then we're always going to use the external benchmark because we don't know how to measure ourselves because we don't have a shared agreement of what success is. So we look outside. And I also think it's layers of it. It's just so many layers. But one thing I did want to ask as I was saying all of this, and I get distracted by the people and them, singing outside. Does this also happen in Haiti?
Oh yeah, it happens. It depends. I'm gonna use compa in particular. It happens, it'll be in a lyric. So for example, Wyclef Jean, who is from Haiti, worked with one of our bands, a compa band, T Vice,
Mm-hmm.
on a song titled Party by the Sea. It's Wyclef, T Vice, and Buju Banton. And then afterwards, T Vice had already been a big band to the Haitian community before this song existed, by the way. Okay. Afterwards, T Vice had another song where sometimes in compa you could have a spoken ad-lib. Oh, did you do BET yet? You know what I mean? Because they did BET because of Wyclef. So now this is a bragging thing. Oh, did you do BET yet? Obviously, other bands
Mm-hmm.
can't say yes. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, but I think it depends on the sector because you find that the sectors that have a stronger sense of our identity, of our African ancestry, of our culture, of voodoo, of other things, they kind of hold on to our African identity as opposed to trying to measure ourselves by the French or by the United States, right? Because some people may not measure themselves by French directly, but they will do it in speaking. Can you speak French? Can you read French? Okay. And that's somehow a measure of intelligence. Some other people do it by, to the United States. So like the BET thing. I think with what you said in regards to Trinidad is that part of it is trying to figure out a sense of self, but I think that answer comes with understanding who the United States is. How did the United States come to be? What is the relationship between you and the United States? If the United States is a country of imperialism, what is are you on there? Are you subject? Are you an object of their imperialism? You know what I mean? Like, and then what does that tell you about you? And then this is how you felt. Okay, so then what am I then?
It's interesting because when I was listening to you speak, there's a parallel that's almost identical. Because what we do here in Trinidad is, can you speak proper?
Okay.
And by that, they mean proper English.
Mm-hmm.
So we measure ourselves based on that. And then when it comes to so that's our British colonial background, which goes back over 100 and something years. And then you come across to the American thing. I think part of that is because we are on the doorstep of the United States. We are right outside of the United States, which is the world's largest exporter of media product. And America is very good at promoting itself. Land of the free, home of the brave, the best place, greatest, number one. And because of that, many people think that if like New York, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Everybody wants to go to America because they think that this is the standard. And it is not just about physically migrating. It's also about having our culture make it there. It's about having our exports make it there. Is this idea that if we get American acceptance, that we've truly made it?
So with the Haiti thing in language, I do want to say that Haiti has a language.
Mm-hmm.
Creole is the language of Haitian people.
Mm-hmm.
It has its own grammar. It has its own rules, regulations, how to form a sentence, everything. This is what people speak. This is what everybody speaks. 100% of Haitians speak Creole in Haiti. Okay. about 10% of Haitians speak French. And
Mhm.
yet, knowing French is the measure of your intelligence in Haiti for a lot of people.
But I did want to talk about one thing, definitely before we move on from Max It Up, is where the idea of we culture and we identity. She talks about we identity a lot throughout, in a lot of her music, but you hear it a lot in Max It Up, this idea of who we are. And my question is always, what is we identity? Because, I was reading this really interesting book. You can see I have the book falling apart. I buy it on Amazon. I should have buy it local. But I went and play fast and buy it on Amazon and the thing falling off. It's only pages coming out anyway. It's called Governing Sound, The Cultural Politics of Trinidad's Musics by Jocelyn Gilbert. Very interesting books. All you know it interesting because I have plenty of stickies. Very interesting book. And in it, she talks about what happened around the late 1950s into the 1960s, because we saw the People's National Movement, which was Trinidad and Tobago's first locally grown political party. The first prime minister of this country was at the head of the People's National Movement, Dr. Eric Williams. And as they came into power, as they were coming into power, and as a way to consolidate, they developed the national project. And it was about establishing what is our shared identity in order to maintain the independence and power that we gained in 1962 as an independent state from Britain, and then eventually help us evolve into a republic in 1976, where we had our first president. This idea of what it means to be one people. So this word we suddenly started coming to the forefront. And in that time, we had the conversation about steel pan being we national instrument. And then, of course, calypso music being we art form. Art form. This is we music. And at that time, it was really the Creole class of people, the upper middle class of people in this country who were primarily of mixed race or people of African descent who had gained some political and social status, economic grounding. And they started to push this idea of what it meant to be a Trinidadian. And because they felt like in order for us to truly be valid as a nation and to maintain our position as an independent state, we needed to have this shared identity. So when I listen to Destra's music and I say, no, this is what we are, this is who we are, I hear a lot of that. But the issue that comes out from that is that many of the ideas of who we are often omits other groups of people. Because in her music and in these conversations about we and in soca, you don't really hear people talking about the experiences of indigenous people. You don't hear people talking about the experiences of Chinese people. You don't hear the voices of other groups in this country. And of course, the idea of queer people is completely lost. And often the voices of women are lost. Not thankfully we have a person like Destra, but sometimes men they don't even talk about women unless they're objectifying them. So this idea of who we are, and we're going to see this coming up a lot throughout this series. And I'm going to have other conversations about this. I think it's something to dive deeper in. But before we do that, it's time to get to key songs earlier. So I'll kick things off. My first key song on this album is Charlie. That features Delina Dan. I really like, which is a group, a band. I really like Charlie. It's a fun song. It's chutney soca. I don't know. It just sounds natural. They just sound natural together. It's bubbly. It's cute. And at the same time, I think it shows how Destra is able to move between spaces. Like she can go from chutney soca, she could go into a max it up. She could go into, colors again, into that more calypso space. She could move between your records without sounding like she's hopping on a trend or she's foreign to any of these sounds. It sounds natural for Destra.
I like that. My first key song is Colors Again.
All right.
I love that melody. It's not too much to harp on. It's just a good classic Destra sound to me. The melody is smooth, it's fun, it's bright. Not much more to say. It's just good.
I actually have Colors Again as my next key song. I
Okay.
actually have Colors Again as my second key song. I like this record because we have these interesting key changes throughout the song.
Yeah.
Like it's not a one shot
jazzy.
straight. Yeah, it's very jazzy. It's constantly moving. And that's not easy to do for a singer. to like
No.
move between key changes like that. Like, when I think of people who can do that really well, I think of often more jazz based singers, people like
Yeah.
Nancy Wilson, people like Phyllis Hyman, or I think of people who come from, the big band swing era of pop in
Yeah.
America, or not Ella Fitzgerald, or I think of somebody who might be more grounded in like a real different type of calypso, like a person like Lord Kitchener, somebody who's able to really understand how music moves, like somebody who knows music. You have to
Yeah.
know music. Destra does it instinctively. And I think that that's really interesting. And that melody and those key changes that she's building, there's that real calypso type of melody.
Yeah.
And I like how she's backed throughout it by this rumbling rhythm section because it's present. So many things happening in
Yeah.
one song. And the way the rhythm section is pieced together makes me really I like, because at the very start, I actually thought for a second that was Three Canal. I said, is that Three Canal? Is that
Okay.
Three Canal, the group? And I felt like, okay, I'm not sure if that's really them. I didn't see them credited, but it kind of made me wanted a remix to the song so I could hear them do a take of this with Destra and just a rhythm section. I think that would have been interesting.
Yeah, Colors again, it is jazzy. I find that I would consider this a pan song as well.
Yeah, I would consider this a pan song because
And a lot
bang,
of
bang, 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 dun, 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 dun.
right there, a lot of pan songs are jazzy in the way the melodies are composed.
Mm-hmm.
They're rhythmic, there's a lot of syncopation and rhythmic aspect, which is also a part of jazz too, but also due to soca and like you said, the rhythm section and stuff like that. But a lot of the melodies are jazzy in how they move and have that swing influence as well, that big band, that swing thing. So that's accurate. My second song was Oh Chalet. I know I'm mispronouncing this thing right. Mispronouncing this thing right.
Oh, Chalet. Oh, Chalet. Na, na.
Yes. But yeah, I think that kind of, you know how you just asked about we identity?
Mm-hmm.
And even though it doesn't speak to like the indigenous population that's there, but the fact that this artist would make a chutney soca song is
Mm-hmm.
an aspect. It's not in Max It Up, but it's an aspect of recognizing different sounds that's taking place within the country and different communities
Mm-hmm.
that are within the country, even though it might be another major community, as opposed to, like you said, tapping into the indigenous people of the land.
My next key song is Jumpin'.
Okay.
This is my third and final key song, Jumpin'.
Okay. Okay.
I like the ad-libs. They remind me a lot of Denise. A lot of Denise. And I also really like how she paints a very vivid picture of Carnival. Like when you listen to this record, you could actually see Port of Spain in your mind. Like if you ever want to know what Carnival look like, just listen to the words and how she paints the picture here. It takes it to Carnival. I like it. It just really puts me in a happy place.
So I have two more. My third one was Max It Up for all the reasons we mentioned earlier in the episode. So I don't
All the
have to
good
go
parts are
there
maxed
again.
up. All the good parts.
My fourth one and final is Jumpin' as well.
All
That song is
right.
very whimsical. She's jumping around in the melody itself. Now I don't know. Uh-huh. 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 Yes,
That you
she
gagged
is.
me. That you gagged me.
Da-da-da-da-da, whoa. Ah-da-da-da-da.
I didn't
Ba-da-da-da,
even think
oh.
of that.
Da-da-da-da-da. Ba-da-da-da-da. Like she's moving, she's just jumping, jumping
Jumping.
around. And I don't know if that was like because sometimes when you're creating something, the inspiration comes to you in a certain kind of way that you may not be thinking of every single detail in it, but it just comes together.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it was like, hey, let's do this with it. It could be either or. But for a song titled Jumpin', I think it's perfect. I love the melody.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hold on to the lyrics too much. I don't be holding on to lyrics too much unless they blow me away or something, particular grabs my attention. But it's just a great song and one of my favorite Destra songs.
Well, thank you everyone for watching this episode of Trini Trent TV, Maco Soca, as we go deeper into Destra's catalog. Thank you, Elikya.
Thank you for having me.
Elikya, feeling a little under the weather today. Just a little touch. But she powered through and we had a great conversation. I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful. You understand? Now let me jump off, jump in, whoa.
Right.
All the way off this call. I'm going to enjoy the rest of this day. I really had fun, y'all. I make sure that you subscribe to the channel.
Yes.
If Destra blocked us in the past, tell her to come back and unblock us so she could watch and enjoy this episode.
We back on her good side.
We back on her good side. You understand? Yeah. So make sure you subscribe, tell a friend, and we'll catch you all the next time. All right? Later.